What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, May 30th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Our phone lines are open. 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. So let's just dive right on into it. Rather historic events taking place in Israel. Netanyahu, despite winning the recent election, has been unable to form a coalition government. And out of concern that one of his rivals might succeed in forming a coalition, has basically dissolved the Knesset and called for new elections in September. And so that blocked President Reuven Rivlin from trying to form another coalition that would have seen Netanyahu forced to step down and deal with his corruption charges. But now they're going to have more elections. So that would be very, very interesting. There was actually a politician in the Knesset who elicited laughter by saying that Netanyahu had agreed to a Palestinian state and full rights for the Palestinians as long as the Knesset would pass that immunity bill. So, little chuckle over there. Back in 2016, there was this failed coup d'etat in Turkey, and one of the people who got arrested in the aftermath of it was Serkan Golge. He's a dual Turkish-American citizen. He worked for NASA, and he was thrown in jail, and he's been released as of yesterday. He's going back to his family. Now, Golge was formerly a NASA research scientist who worked in Houston, was imprisoned while visiting family in southern Turkey in 2016, just weeks after the coup plot roiled the country. Authorities said Golge worked for Turkish cleric Fethullah Gulen, who's accused of masterminding the failed coup plot and is considered a terrorist by the Turkish government. So they've let him go, and whether that's an attempt to salvage the F-35 deal or not, we don't really know. At this point, it's looking more and more like Turkey may just go with Russian equipment. Now, as you know, they just had the EU elections, and interestingly enough, Catalan independence leader Carles Puigdemont won his election. He was elected as a member of the European Parliament last weekend. They are not allowing him into the building to show their displeasure over all this talk about independence and sovereignty. So a little bit of a diplomatic situation there. Turning over to Libya, it looks like things are heating up there. We may be looking at Libyan War version 2.0. And basically what it is, following the 2011 regime change against Gaddafi, the entire country basically descended into chaos with all of these competing warlords back and forth. And one of the most powerful is General Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army, which has since April laid siege to the capital city. And now there's evidence surfacing that external countries like Turkey, as well as foreign mercenaries, are bolstering the ranks of the UN Government of National Accord, which Haftar is trying to unseat. So apparently there's been an Al Jazeera investigation, caught what's presumed to be weapons-laden cargo planes making repeat trips to makeshift battlefront airfields. And apparently they're flipping their transponders off during the deliveries to make it harder to see where they're going. So basically these airplanes are going to support Khalifa Haftar, and they're dropping off these unidentified payloads. So apparently, satellite images and flight data show 2 Russian-made Ilyushin 76 aircraft registered to a joint Emirati-Kazakh company called Ream Travel made several trips between Egypt, Israel, and Jordan before landing at military bases controlled by Haftar's Libyan National Army, just as it attempted to seize the capital. So, more wars, rumors of wars. Okay, Governor Ron DeSantis and his cabinet went ahead and had their little cabinet meeting in Israel yesterday, despite complaints that the session violated open government laws because it was held outside the state, where people couldn't come on in and watch. So basically all they did was presented a proclamation of support for Israel and heard from Israel on several issues supposedly important to Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis then signed a bill that prohibits anti-Semitism in Florida's public schools and university, defining anti-Semitism as including drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, blaming Israel for all interreligious or political tensions, or requiring behavior of Israel that is not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. So he was writing that one very, very carefully. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. The United States has organized this conference, if you will, in Bahrain next month. That is part of the United States Middle East peace plan, and where the first part of the deal of the century is to be presented, the carrot. And China and Russia have decided they're going to boycott the summit in Bahrain. They're saying that boycotting the Bahrain conference comes within the framework of a bilateral Russian-Chinese agreement not to participate in it. So it's off to a rough start. Jordan's King Abdullah has told Jared Kushner that a lasting Middle East peace can come only with the creation of a Palestinian state on land captured by Israel in a 1967 war and with East Jerusalem as its capital. So we're already seeing the pushback on Jared Kushner's deal of the century. Okay. Okay, pardon me. German diplomats recently visited the Gaza Strip and an Arab capital where Hamas leaders were present in an effort to broker a prisoner exchange deal between Israel and the Palestinian faction. And Hamas insisted that all Palestinian prisoners previously released under the Charlotte prisoners deal, but who were later rearrested by Israel, be released before any new talks could begin. There was a big stink about that. There'd been a prior prisoner exchange, and Hamas had released their prisoners. Israel released their prisoners, then proceeded to simply rearrest them, throw them back in jail. So the same sources said that Marwan Issa, commander of the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, and Hamas chief in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, recently visited Cairo and discussed with Egyptian officials the ceasefire between Palestinian factions in the Gaza Strip and Israel and the possibility of a prisoner exchange deal. Well, it's nice to see that somebody is trying to tamp these things down here. Article out of Council for the National Interest, and it's talking about the fact that the true cost of Israel to America goes far beyond the official numbers. And they talk about how back in 1992, the president of AIPAC bragged about how he got almost $1 billion in other goodies for Israel that people, meaning the Americans, don't even know about. In 2012, Israel's former commander-in-chief said that between 2009 and 2012, American taxpayers had paid for more of his country's defense budget than had the Israeli taxpayers. It's costing us a huge amount of money. Another article, this one's coming out of Middle East Monitor, is pointing out that despite its military superiority, the reality is Saudi Arabia is actually losing the war in Yemen. They're controlling a couple of key places and harbors, but they can't secure the inner territory. And it's saying they're fighting a loose cluster of groups headed by the disciplined and battle-hardened Houthi rebels who are allegedly supported by Iran. Now, major countries like France and Italy help by providing arms, while the U.S. supplies arms, intelligence, and technical assistance, such as in-flight refueling, although that has been suspended recently. But that war has just dragged on and dragged on and dragged on, and you got to hand it to the people of Yemen. They're tough to have held on this long. Iran is still talking tough. They're saying it's pointless to try and have any more talks with the United States because the United States doesn't keep their agreements, which Trump demonstrated when he pulled out of the P5+1 deal here. And so as more and more people start talking about war with Iran, we need to look back at the 1980s and the Iran-Iraq war, because that battle hardened the Iranian forces, and those commanders, those veterans, are still there. They're still in the government. And it's not going to be an easy war. It's not going to be like Iraq was. Okay. So, apparently Moscow was trying to get some peace talks going up in Afghanistan. So they had a group of Afghan politicians led by former President Hamid Karzai, he of UNOCAL fame, and a 14-member Taliban team led by the co-founder of the group, Abdul Ghani Baradar. And they met for 2 days in Moscow to discuss the Afghan peace. And basically the sticking point is nobody is agreeing to a ceasefire as long as foreign forces are inside Afghanistan, meaning the Americans. And we've had these American forces in there since 2001, trying to prop up the government that the U.S. put in there. But the Taliban are simply saying, no, as long as the Americans are on the ground, the fighting will continue. So we'll see what happens there. We mentioned this earlier in the week, where the United States has contracted with the RAND Corporation for a plan to destabilize Russia. And apparently part of the plan involves using Ukraine to destabilize Russia and using Syria to destabilize Russia. And Russian Defense Minister Andrei Initsky, in an interview in Zvezda TV, said that, yeah, the U.S. is taking active steps to try and destabilize Russia. And he pointed out the RAND Corporation, which is this big think tank. They made fun of it in Dr. Strangelove. They referred to it as the Bland Corporation. But everybody knew what they were talking about. So according to the document coming out of the RAND Corporation, Washington indirectly plans to put pressure on Russia through Ukraine and Syria. In particular, the United States should continue to provide arms to Ukraine, as well as actively support the opposition groups in Syria. And apparently, there's a concern that the United States will try and remove the Russian military from Transnistria, but such a step is not a priority for them. Okay. Now, speaking of Ukraine, up in Ukraine, Kiev has endured major trade imbalances with most of its European partners. This is according to the latest data from the country's statistics agency. And Ukraine is still struggling to make its domestic products meet rigorous EU standards. And the overall trade deficit with the EU totaled $535 million Now, Europe's number one economy, Germany, contributed most to the ever-widening gap. Now, Ukraine signed the controversial association agreement with the EU 5 years ago, shortly after the Maidan Revolution ousted then-President Viktor Yanukovych, who had rejected the association deal with EU. So the political part of the agreement has been in effect since September of 2014. The economic part has de facto operated from January 2016, and Ukraine is in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. Turning down to Venezuela, the State Department, in an interview with Breitbart News, said that the Trump administration believes any talks between Venezuelan, they always call him a dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and President, even though he's not elected, Juan Guaido, must include Maduro's departure as a precondition for elections. So we're back to that old thing. Give us everything we want, and then maybe we'll do something nice for you. Now, Guaido admitted he has agreed to send envoys to Norway to meet with Maduro cronies for mediation that he insisted was neither talks nor negotiation. Sounds like it to me. Now, Norway continues to recognize Maduro as the president of Venezuela, despite the expiration of his last term in January, raising concerns about that government's partiality in the matter. Well, wait a minute. Maduro has another term in office. He won the elections last year. What we have here is the United States saying, we don't recognize your term in office. So, Guaido admitted this week, okay, we already talked about that. Many of the Venezuelan opposition leaders reacted to the news with outrage, noting that Maduro has engaged in 4 other attempts at negotiation with the opposition in the past 5 years and used them to reinforce their control of the military and kill, imprison, and otherwise repress political dissidents. Now, the Trump administration has steadfastly supported Guaido since he was sworn in as president in January, just by imperial edict. It's a puppet ruler here. Apparently, the economic war in Venezuela has gotten really bad. Hyperinflation hit 130,000% last year. And that means that an item that cost 1 bolivar in 2017 now costs 1,300 bolivars. So, tough times down there. As you know, we're getting into the summer months here, and schools and universities and academies are letting out a lot of commencement speeches going on out there. And up at West Point, Mike Pence gave a commencement address that just was nothing but unbridled war talk about how we're going to go here, we're going to go there. And critics of the speech were saying it's almost like you hear from a character in a Hollywood spoof, you know, trying to pretend to be a war-mad dictator. But basically, he's out there setting the tone and saying, yes, you will all see combat. We're going to go to war here. We're going to go to war there. We're going to go to war everywhere. Okay. Turning to our domestic politics, we are still seeing the fallout, if you will, from Mueller's conference yesterday, where he basically came on out and said, well, I'm not going to say that Trump was totally innocent. I just can't say that he's guilty, which is not the way that it works in this country. Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, we have our hands out to you, asking for your support. The postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800 724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. The network thanks you. Okay, so we're talking about the fallout from Robert Mueller's news conference. And basically, Mueller didn't say anything concrete, but what he has done is he's launched another 2 years of Democratic attacks on Donald Trump. And they're going to be out there saying, well, you know, just because Robert Mueller didn't find anything, he's saying there may still be something there. Okay, so he's basically just giving them fodder to crank up the attacks and say, yes, we're going to do this for the next 2 years right into the 2020 elections. And in some cases, it's actually putting pressure on House Democrats to sort of, you know, walk the talk. They've been talking about impeachment all this time. And Nancy Pelosi is saying this would be a trap going into 2020 because the House can impeach Donald Trump. The Senate will not remove him. So, I mean, the reality is the Mueller investigation basically showed us that in 2016, Hillary Clinton was just a terrible candidate. And despite all the massive fraud and the illegal immigrants voting and the cheating in the primaries, she still couldn't win it. So going into 2020, several of the Democratic presidential candidates are already on social media calling on Congress to begin impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. Here's the problem. They don't really have a high crime and misdemeanor. They got a suspicion. They clearly don't like him, but you're not supposed to be able to impeach somebody just because you don't like him. There has to be an impeachable offense, a high crime or misdemeanor. Senator Elizabeth Warren declared that Mueller's statement makes clear that his report is an impeachment referral for Congress to act on. No, I don't think so. There's nothing in there. Beto O'Rourke is saying Democrats must act now and impeach or lose our democracy forever. Actually, I think all this talk about impeachment is an attack on our democracy. And, of course, now people are starting to say, oh, was Mueller bought off? Did Trump get to him? Did Putin get to him? Does Putin have a videotape of Mueller in a Moscow hotel with 2 prostitutes? So they're just not letting up on this. Now, as it turns out, Mueller had a conflict of interest going into this special counsel's job, because apparently he wanted to be head of the FBI, and he came to the Oval Office along with the other candidates seeking to be named director of the FBI, and Trump turned him down, and the very next day he was named the special counsel. Yeah, that's a conflict of interest. He can't be objective. And that means that the fact that he failed to find anything, it's all that much stronger of a conclusion. He wanted to find something, and he couldn't. Anyway. Over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is saying that Robert Mueller is the one who needs to be investigated. And I would agree with that one as well. So the ball is in William Barr's court now. Trump has given him authority to declassify anything that Barr thinks the American people have a right to see. And hopefully that's going to start happening in the next couple of weeks. That is, if Barr's a straight shooter. And already we're seeing pushback from the involved players saying, oh, this will do grave damage to national security. You can't declassify this stuff. It'll harm our national security. And that's sort of a catch-all phrase for we need to keep things secret from the American people. So we know that the FBI included unverified material from the Steele dossier to go to the secret spy court to get the warrant to spy on Carter Page. Now, all of that was classified, and now it's coming on out. Okay, we got a caller waiting on the line. We'll take that call as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently, William Barr is already striking back at Mueller, saying that Mueller could have reached a decision if he'd wanted to. So he's basically implying dereliction of duty on the part of Mueller for not saying that we didn't find any wrongdoing, which is what his report said. And again, we now know Mueller had a conflict of interest. Trump turned him down to be head of the FBI. All right, we're going to go to the phones now. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, a lot of these rhinos and all the media establishment types and talking heads, all they're talking about how great this Mueller guy is, and the guy doesn't even know what his job is. He doesn't even know the basic tenets of our legal system, that you're innocent until proven guilty. I mean, it's just amazing to me. And, you know, that the media can continue with this charade and not call attention to this. I mean, the only one I've heard so far is Alan Dershowitz. I mean, even Judge Napolitano doesn't let Mueller get away with this. I think one of the more interesting things, though, that happened a month or so ago when Barr appointed an attorney to look into the Russiagate, he chose a guy named Durham.
Yes.
And this guy he had investigated the whole Whitey Bulger. You know, you had a call yesterday talk about Whitey Bulger and how Mueller and Comey were all involved in that.
Yes.
And the guy that investigated that and exposed the CIA connections and the FBI is a guy named Durham. I think it's John Durham.
Yeah.
And I think that he wasn't allowed to go to a certain level. I'm sure they told him to call off the dogs when he got to a certain level in the FBI and CIA. I think that's why, because when I saw Mueller on TV yesterday, he looked scared, you know. You ever see that movie, The Fifth Element?
Oh, yeah.
You know the part where the guy that plays the big industrialist and Zorg's coming to get him, and he's like, he's got blood. He's so stressed out, he's got blood coming from his forehead.
Yes.
It seems like there's like a Zorg. There's some kind of an organization in this country, the deep state Zorg. And I was just waiting for blood to start pouring down Mueller's forehead because he's failing, you know? And, you know, that's what I got from that. I know that's kind of a weird analogy, but that's what I'm starting to see in a lot of these deep state guys. And in a way, it's a little bit frightening because what are they going to do? I mean, these are like demonic entity people that are capable of doing anything. And at the same time, I think like Trump being the showman that he is, he's setting a trap for these people. I mean, let's face it, Michael, don't you think that Trump has their server or what was on it? I mean, don't you think at his level they know about Seth Rich, the real fact?
I'm sure that they do.
Signals.
I'm sure that they do.
Maybe he's saying, let's let him go all the way to an impeachment hearing, get everybody watching it, do an end round around the controlled mainstream media, and then drop the bomb on him, you know? Drop the Seth Rich and the fact of the servers that it was never even touched by the Russians. It was a thumb drive. I mean, they have evidence of that. I mean, you know, I'm just a fringe kind of guy that's out here getting stuff on the computer and listening to different alternate radio shows, and I know about it. So the President of the United States, with military intelligence and, you know, whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, he's got all kinds of, you know, information coming in. They've got to know about this kind of stuff. And I think Trump's just letting them. That's probably why Nancy wants no part of it. She knows that this is the way Trump operates. He lets people walk out on a limb, and then he saws it off. He's been doing this, you know, with the Kavanaugh. I mean, he's just been kicking their ass since he's been president. And I don't know. I mean, I think that he's got the look, the confidence of somebody that's got all the cards, you know, and he's saying, all right, just keep raising and put more money in that pot. Now, my fear is I'm not scared of the impeachment. I think Trump's got the winning hand. The problem is, are they going to do a false flag? That is their only card that they can play right now. And that is really, everybody's got to be on the lookout for that. Anybody that's, in any kind of intelligence community, really start looking for any kind of chatter. And, it could be anywhere, but hopefully all these people are being monitored and they're going to get even in more trouble than they already are in. But,
unfortunately, the reality is above a certain level in our society, and you already mentioned this earlier, where Durham, when he got up to a certain level in the hierarchy, he was told to stop investigating. That clearly is an aspect of our government. People above a certain level are never investigated for their crimes. We've certainly seen that to be true of the Clintons. There is so much evidence of wrongdoing regarding that email server. There's so much evidence of wrongdoing regarding the Clinton Foundation, the Uranium One deal, and yet nothing gets done. We know that the Clinton Foundation doesn't qualify to be a 501c3 tax-exempt charitable foundation. They don't give enough to charity, and yet they're being left alone.
Well, I think that's my point, though, about the Durham thing, is that they kind of violated the rules, the deep state, and that's why I think that the gloves are off now. They're saying, well, you're going after trying to frame a president, tried to commit a basic political coup against the president of the United States. That's kind of like to the point where, they have gentleman agreements and you don't go after certain people, but they're the ones that violated the kind of norms of the political class. And I think that's why the old rules are done with. I think that Trump is, justified in going after whoever was involved. And like I said, when you try to kill the king, you better kill him.
Yes.
That's the old saying. And Trump better act like they tried to kill him. He said it was a coup. Now I'm hoping he acts like it was a coup. And if he does believe it was a coup and acts like it was a coup, anybody involved in the coup, whether they're the highest level, even the Illuminati, the gentleman agreements are off. That's the way it should be treated. And I think that's the signal that appointing that Durham was. Because I'm sure Mueller got the message right away, oh my God, he's digging this guy up.
Well, I agree it's time for Trump to put on those presidential brass knuckles, and I would love to see it happen, but I'm not going to get too excited until I do see it happen.
Well, I think it's happening, but you got to be careful. Like I said, I wish he was more bold. But at the same time, he did get himself elected president and has survived all these attempts to oust him. And so you got to give him credit in that respect. And I think he's done a pretty good job as president. I'm not totally happy with him, but considering the obstacles that he has, not only from the Democrats, but from his own party. Look, was there one Republican that came out and said anything to defend him yesterday against Mueller? And there's Mueller turning, our laws 180 degrees out of whack, and yet they were all silent. It was an embarrassment for the Republican Party, and they should all be ashamed of themselves. And but at the same time, once again, Trump is doing what I really enjoy most about his presidency, and that is the fact that he's exposing all these rats. There's never been a president that's ever exposed the fake dual system, the establishment, the rhinos, and the media. He's really illuminated the whole system for anybody that wants to see it. Now, whether, I don't agree with his Israeli stuff and all that, but you got to admit, he's really forced everybody to show who they are. I've never seen anything like it. I really have.
Trump gets some of the credit for that, but I think a lot of the credit for revealing this deep state machination has to come back here on the independent media, because we've been working at exposing it before Trump even announced he was running for office.
Yeah, when I used to give out the 9/11 DVDs on the street corner, I used to think maybe one day we'll give the right person will get this in their hands, somebody that'll take it the next step, and we can start getting exposing these rat finks, and I just have I don't know if Trump will go to the 9/11 stuff. I'm sure he knows about 9/11, And I think that after martial law, maybe he could go after the 9/11 truth. I don't think
I'm not looking forward to seeing martial law.
That, no.
I'm not looking forward to martial law. I mean, during the 2016 campaign, Trump made a lot of comments that implied that, yes, he knew what was going on with Seth Rich, with 9/11, with Hillary's various illegal acts. But ever since he's gone into that Oval Office, he has sort of been absorbed by the Borg, if you will. He's been assimilated. And for the most part, even if you're following his tweets, he's going along with the official line on pretty much everything. And it kind of makes me wonder why there is so much rancor directed at him, because he's basically giving the deep state pretty much everything that they want, especially with regards to Israel and the military-industrial complex.
Well, I think that the battle is first nationalism, and then after nationalism, you can do more of the change and to root out the deep state. I mean, the guy's had a hard time. I mean, he's being attacked. It's amazing by how many different institutions are attacking him. It's just constant.
Yes.
And my reason for saying he should declare martial law is that you're not going to be able to defeat the people that did 9/11 and their proteges, or the central banks without martial law. You're just not going to be able to root that whole system out unless you do have some form of martial law. I don't believe it can happen just through regular politics. It's just this. It's kind of like the Kennedy assassination. They'll never admit to the truth of that. So the only way I ever think it's going to happen is through some form. It's like those Ron Paul people. I was a big Ron Paul supporter, and it's always, let's audit the Federal Reserve. And
Yes.
oh, so you think they're going to stand still for an audit? These are people that assassinate presidents. The way you audit the Federal Reserve is you come in with stealth helicopters and you arrest them in the middle of the night. That's how you audit the Federal Reserve. I mean, so they understand the dangers of the central banks. Yet they think that you can deal with them in a polite, normal, rational way. No, you can't. You can't deal with the Federal Reserve. You're not going to be able to audit the Federal Reserve. You're going to have to arrest the Federal Reserve.
Sort of the Templar approach.
Well, Gene, come on. Look at how dangerous these people are. They overthrow presidents. They assassinate. They cause coups. They
start wars.
And then to think that, we'll just audit them, and they're just going to come in and open their books. It's kind of like, let's audit the mafia while we're at it. You need RICO, you need helicopters, you need guys special forces. That's how you audit the Federal Reserve. So you got to admit at their core what they are, and they're a bunch of gangsters. Warmongering gangster killers and assassins, and that's the way they got to be treated. So anyway, thanks for letting me rant, Michael.
All right, Joe. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. And getting on back to the nattering and grommishing that's taking place between Mueller and James Comey. Apparently, Comey wrote a Washington Compost op-ed titled, "We Didn't Spy on Anyone's Campaign." And he basically says, we asked a federal judge for permission to surveil former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, but that's not spying. And before that, the FBI infiltrated an informant into the campaign to gather information on its operations, but really that's not spying. So it's a very strange reaction from Comey, because for pretty much anybody else working in intelligence, this was spying. And spying on a campaign is a big deal. So I can see why they're nervous. If this thing really breaks out, it's going to be bigger than Watergate. It really is. Nancy Pelosi is out there attacking Facebook, screaming that they were willing enablers of Russian interference in 2016. We've had how many investigations now that said no, there was no Russian interference, or the amount of Russian influence in 2016 was microscopic. I guess Pelosi's very unhappy with Facebook. Apparently, they had an unflattering video of her stuttering and slurring her words, and she wanted that taken down. Back over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton says they've uncovered a lot of information because of the Freedom of Information Act, and apparently they're seeking the FBI charts containing information on potential statutory violations committed by Hillary Clinton in the former Secretary of State's use of a non-secure, non-government email server to conduct government business. And apparently Fitton is saying it is obvious that the FBI knew of Hillary's abuses and they knew what was going on. And Judicial Watch is also suing for draft copies of the talking points prepared by the FBI for its officials to use following then-Director James Comey's July 2016 press conference, during which he recommended against prosecuting Clinton for mishandling classified information because she didn't mean to do wrong. And under Title 18, intent is not required, nor is it the FBI's job to recommend whether somebody be prosecuted. That belongs in the Department of Justice. So it was just a huge, huge mess. All righty. Okay, we already talked about Mueller wanted to be head of the FBI. Okay, there's an interesting little story floating around, and it started with a reporter at the Wall Street Journal who reported that a U.S. warship, the USS John McCain, literally was hidden from view while Trump was in Japan. And the reporter who wrote this is a known Trump hater, Trump basher. And they were saying that they had put tarps over the name of the ship. Anything that had identifying marks had to be hidden from view. And that this all came down from the White House. Well, the White House and Trump have denied this, and apparently even the Secretary of Defense had no idea about this. And so nobody knows where it came from, but the fingers are pointing every which way. But that didn't stop Meghan McCain from excoriating President Trump, just making their grief that much more unbearable. All right, we got to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right to the phones to Kerry in California. Aloha, Kerry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I guess you've heard the leak from the pharmacist that said there's several members of Congress on the Alzheimer's drugs.
Yes.
And that's kind of scary. If a guy forgets his Alzheimer's drugs that morning, he's got to vote on a war that's going to get us against Iran or somebody. Just think of the implications of that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's very alarming to realize that many of our members of Congress are really not fit to serve, but they keep getting elected and put back into position. Certainly we've seen, Nancy Pelosi has trouble holding it together. That's why she wanted Facebook to take that videotape down.
Well, every time I got a federal license, a physical went with it. And if I couldn't pass the physical, then I didn't get the license.
Yeah.
So Congress shouldn't be any difference.
I would absolutely agree. I would absolutely agree. I mean, those people are in bad shape. There's actually a pharmacy inside the Capitol building where they can go get their meds.
Yeah, that's right. It was supposed to be confidential, but it got leaked out. On something else here, Mike, that kind of scares me about Pence giving that speech up at West Point. But he's telling the truth. And he's an ultimate neocon, and I think the consensus is that they have to have these wars to save the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. Because
that's exactly
they have to take over these countries that aren't using the dollar. After Vietnam, it lost a good percentage of its value. So when they get through with all this military stuff and they think they've saved the dollar and boosted the economy at the same time, the dollar's going to be worthless because they're going to inflate it away in order to accomplish all these things.
Yeah, We're not in the same condition that we were in at the start of World War II. And start of World War II, we were a manufacturing powerhouse. The dollar was very strong. We had a good, solid population of people who were unfortunately very naively trusting of the government when they said we have to go to war. None of that happens anymore. Go back and read your Art of War by Sun Tzu. And right there at the very beginning, it says there are certain things that must be in place for a leader of a country to have a successful war. And the U.S. government doesn't have them. We don't have a military that believes in the moral rightness of this war. We don't have a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of these wars. They're not willing to bear the hardship that all this war is bringing to us.
That's why when you said, when they get these illegals and they promise them citizenship for fighting in the war, it's not going to be because they don't have an allegiance to our country, but it's not going to be any difference for citizens of our country anyway, because, they're going to see the same thing. This is not America. We're not fighting for America in these things. Okay, Mike, here's the music. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thank you. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to our news, again, there is just so much rancor and venom out there regarding Donald Trump. Now, Cher, who had said she was going to move to Canada if Trump won, but she's still here, and she came out with this bizarre tweet about wanting President Trump to be sexually assaulted. And later on, when there was criticism, she deleted the tweet, but she's refusing to apologize. We've lost our capacity for civil discussion. If you can't be civil, if you can't be diplomatic, nothing is going to get done. You're just going to stand there screaming names at each other, attacking each other with memes, and you won't have an exchange of ideas, which has to occur if there's going to be any progress made. All righty, as we start gearing up for 2020, way ahead of time, apparently Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is planning to endorse Elizabeth Warren over Bernie Sanders. So, looks like Alexandria is not thinking about running in 2020. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the economic news. Apparently, there is a report out that Apple may buy Tesla. And apparently, Apple has had their own electric car, the iCar. And so they're deciding, since they can't get the iCar to work, they've been at it for quite a while, and apparently they made an offer to buy Tesla. It hasn't gone through, may not go through, but that would be definitely a very interesting vehicle here. I think electric cars are the wave of the future. I think we need to come up with a pollution-free source to generate that electricity. And it kind of irks me sometimes to see people driving around in these electric cars and they've got stickers on them saying, I'm pollution free. No, you're not. That electricity comes from somewhere. Here on Oahu, it's an oil-fired generator plant. That's it. Down on the Big Island, they've got geothermal, but it doesn't reach up here. All right, let's take another phone call here. The White Rose in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know about a localized geological occurrence that occurred over here.
Okay.
I live up here in the San Juan Mountains, 50 miles from the town of Cortez, up deep into the mountains, out in the middle of the wilderness, in this little town called Rico.
Okay.
And our roads were closed the other day because of global warming. We've been getting a lot of snow lately. It snowed the other day even here. It's May 30th already, and it's still sleeting on us and snowing today. But anyway, down about 7 miles outside of Dolores, down on the way down to town while we go shopping. There was a massive landslide. Okay.
Yes.
2 giant, massive rocks came crashing down. One rock measured 50 feet by 50 feet by over 25 feet. They estimated that it weighs over 8 million pounds. 4,000 tons of rock comes crashing down and smashed the highway, totally tore the highway out, like pretty wide.
Yeah.
Impassable for 2 days. It was two big rocks. One was the bigger one, 50 by 50 by 25, and there was another smaller one. They managed to blow that up or break that up and get that off the highway. So the highway's open now. But these rocks have been sitting up on top of this ridge for who knows how many years. And now all of a sudden, boom, there they are.
Well,
unbelievable.
Ice may have gotten
unbelievable. The massiveness of it.
What is amazing to me is that somebody didn't look at those rocks and say, these could come crashing down on our highway. Maybe we need to give them a shove and let them go down the other side of the hill.
Oh, we've been looking at these rocks for years as we've been driving by. There's many more up there too, and they're expecting them more to come down too, maybe. So the ride down to town is not quite as safe as it used to be.
Yep.
But that's one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing I wanted to mention was the other day I went down to town to go do some shopping, and I noticed 2 or 3 bus loads of people on the sidewalk getting into these buses, and I looked at them and said, that looks pretty strange. I didn't take a real good close look at them and what kind of people they were. But then an hour later, I saw them in another part of town walking in nice 2x2 file. Must have been a good 100 or more, 150 people. They were giving them the tour of the town of Cortez, Colorado, and it looked to me like they were definitely not Americans. I mean, they were all pretty much brown-skinned people.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't get close enough to tell if they were Guatemalans or from Central America, or they might have even been, the ones from Myanmar, the ones who were having all that trouble over there. Those refugees.
Okay. So
very well behaved, and they were giving him the tour of the town. The general outlay of the town of Cortez looked like to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is all just in my head, but it sure didn't look right. I never seen anything like that before.
Well, the open borders people are trying to basically diffuse, if you will, the migrants across the country, to just blend them all in. That makes it that much harder to round them up for deportation. See, if they were all clustered in one area, Southern California, Texas, Arizona, then rounding them up and deporting them is relatively easy. But if there's 20 in Cortez and there's another 20 over in Rico and there's another 20 over there, it becomes a logistical nightmare. And I think it's definitely deliberate.
Yep. So, Mike, can I plug my website?
Sure.
The whiterose.simplesite, spelled S-I-T-E, simplesite.com. Please check it out. A lot of good, useful information there, spiritual as well as monetary, as well as having to deal with the courts. So please check it out. 15 pages of information. The whiterose.simplesite.com. Thank you, Michael, for taking my call, and have a good day. All
right. Thanks an awful lot for the call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And, you got to watch out for those rocks here. And we have that problem here on the island of Oahu. We have this one main highway that runs almost all the way around the island, and it's called Kamehameha Highway. Same thing on all the other islands. And a while back, over by this Waimea Valley, there was a whole section of the cliff came on down and blocked the road, and it caused just all kinds of traffic nightmares until they could get that cleared away. And now there's this big steel fence that they've put up there, because they know that more rocks will be coming on down. Okay, so let's get on back to the economic news here. Article out of Investment Watch blog talking about how the polarization of the world in trade and taxes is destroying Western economies. Taxes are too high. Tariffs are too high. The economies are just basically grinding to a halt. Now, China has stopped buying U.S. soybeans during the trade dispute. That's one way they're expressing their displeasure over the tariffs and the treatment of Huawei. And China is continuing to drop hints that they may retaliate against the United States by embargoing the rare earth elements that are essential to much of our high tech in this country. Now, yes, the United States has rare earth element mines, but nowhere near enough to meet the demand. So apparently there was a thinly veiled threat on Tuesday that they could place restrictions on rare earth exports by prioritizing domestic users. And in an article from the Xinhua news agency, China's official state-run news source warned that if anyone wants to use imported rare earths against China, the Chinese people will not agree. Now, do you remember when this whole trade war began? And all the experts, including Donald Trump, were saying, it'll be over quickly. China will cave. Didn't happen, did it? Still no end in sight. Alrighty. Apparently there's a big stink over the fact that top Obama officials, former Obama officials, are now working jobs for a Chinese company that is officially considered a threat. So according to a report in the Washington Examiner, Samir Jain, a former senior director for cybersecurity policy under Obama's National Security Council, and now a partner with the international law firm Jones Day, was recently hired by Huawei as a lobbyist. Now, Jain works alongside James Cole, who was Obama's deputy attorney general from 2011 to 2015. Huawei has hired Cole for legal representation in 2017. So talk about the revolving door here. So the U.S. government, of course, is taking the position that Huawei is working directly with the Chinese government in an attempt to access data flowing through 5G cellular networks across the world, ultimately posing a major cybersecurity threat for Americans. You mean as opposed to the NSA and the FBI that are poring over all of that data? That's really the gist of it. Huawei's encryption is very hard to break, and they're not willing to backdoor it. That's what this is really all about. Keeping Americans chained to products that are backdoored by the NSA and can be spied on. And yes, it makes us more vulnerable to cyber criminals, but this is national security. Alrighty, this coming winter, things may get a little cold all over Europe. Now, the European Union has been opposed to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and they have dragged it out and dragged it out, so its completion before next year is now highly doubtful. However, come the end of this year, Russia will cease all gas transit to Europe through Ukraine, whether the Nord Stream 2 is ready or not. And that means Europe could very easily find itself with a major gas shortage in the winter months. Okay. Another little article. This one came from Counter Markets, and it's showing that cryptocurrencies have been trending upwards in price over the past few weeks, but in certain countries around the globe, digital assets have become far more available, such as Argentina. The nation's sovereign currency has lost considerable value, and cryptocurrencies like BTC are seeing all-time price highs. So apparently countries that are suffering from rapid inflation are showing a significant demand for cryptos, and cryptos are coming close to displacing the sovereign currency. Now that would be really, really significant. Over in Switzerland, gold investment is still very popular. They have the second highest per capita gold demand in the world. There is a significant over-the-counter gold trading market, and Switzerland is home to some of the world's largest, most technologically advanced gold refiners. The Swiss Central Bank holds 1,040 tons of gold, the 8th largest central bank gold holding in the world. So they know what's smart. Tesla had another bad week, closing down $19 from the previous Friday's close. People are starting to talk about $10 Tesla. And every attempted bounce in the stock was shortable on a day trading basis. So currently Tesla shares are trading at 188. It would likely be a lot lower if it weren't for Elon Musk's repeated leaked, in quote marks, emails loaded with dubious production and delivery claims, with both barrels pointed directly at the short sellers. So there was a second leaked, again in quote marks, email appeared yesterday as the stock was getting ready to take another plunge, in which Musk asserts that the employees need to catch up on deliveries in order to have a successful quarter. So people are starting to say, is Elon Musk trying to sell automobiles, or is he just out there selling the stock? So Musk has released a report that he's gearing up to start producing the Model Y in the Fremont facility, in addition to consolidating the production of the S and X into one production line. Now, notwithstanding the complications involved with reconfiguring the factory floor to produce two models on one line, hidden behind the concept is that fact that the move would be cutting in half the production rate of each model, which means if he's running behind on deliveries, he will be in trouble. Okay, apparently over at Facebook, there was a meeting of the board of directors, and there was a call for a vote for Mark Zuckerberg to step down as chairman of the board. He would still be the CEO, and they're saying he could focus a little more on the company itself without being the chairman. I haven't heard the official result of the vote, but since Zuckerberg owns 58% of the stock in the company, I'm going to take a wild guess here that he still has both jobs. Over at General Electric, they're looking to slash 1,000 jobs. Another economic indicator. When you go traveling and you have to go through TSA and you have to go through the gate check and you have to empty your pockets into those little bins, you probably have noticed that a lot of people don't grab all their change. They're in a rush. They got to get to the gate. Me, I use a sandwich bag. I put all my change in that so I get it all back here. But apparently, the TSA raked in nearly $1 million last year in change that was just left in those bins. So that's a lot of money. Okay. Google Assistant is Google's AI equivalent to Siri or Alexa, and like these other voice-activated assistants, it can make life easier in all sorts of ways, including setting reminders, controlling smart home devices, booking rental cars, so forth and so on. And the service, which Google says is on at least 1 billion devices, is powered by a giant apparatus of underpaid, overworked human subcontractors who manage the entire operation. This is from The Guardian's Julia Wong. And this army of contractors, it's a sweatshop, is what she's saying. And they work massive amounts of overtime for free in the hopes of eventually becoming a full-time Google employee with all the perks and benefits that come with it. I remember that funny movie, The Interns, or The Internship, about these two middle-aged guys who go through the Google intern program. And it's a cute movie, but obviously the Google that is depicted in that movie is not the reality. Alrighty, getting on down to the border. Javier Perea, the Democratic mayor of Sunland Park, has ordered the We Build the Wall project to stop because apparently they didn't get the proper permits, and more importantly, there is a city ordinance prohibiting any fences higher than 6 feet. And they were building an 18-foot tall wall. I don't know what good a 6-foot fence would be to keep the illegals out. We'll be right back. And aloha, Mirko, welcome back to our show here. So we're talking about this crowdfunded project, We Build the Wall, and they were building an 18-foot tall wall to close a gap in the fencing between the Rio Grande on the east and Mount Cristo Rey to the west. And this was all privately funded through a GoFundMe, happened last year. And the Democratic mayor of Sunland Park has issued a cease and desist order saying that, first of all, they didn't have the proper permits, and they have a city ordinance regulating the height of fences and saying they can only be 6 feet tall. Well, if it's just 6 feet tall, I mean, the illegals are just going to come right on over it. And very clearly, this Democratic mayor is fully on board with the open borders, let's flood the illegal immigrants in. By the way, in response to a comment that was made by an earlier caller, there was briefly an experiment where they recruited some of the illegal immigrants and said, if you will join our military, at the end of your term of service, you will get a green card. And apparently, it didn't go very well, and the program has been discontinued. But again, the illegals are not going to have an emotional connection to this country. They're not going to be terribly efficient fighters. They're just going to, hunker down, do their time, and get out. Over in New Mexico, Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, not too long ago, was denying that there was any kind of a national security crisis at the border. And basically, back in February, Lujan Grisham dismissed Trump's repeated claims of a national security crisis at the border. She even went so far as to order the National Guard troops from both her state and others to withdraw from the border region. Well, how times have changed, because apparently things down at the border are now so out of control. She's asking the federal government for help to deal with the flood of illegal immigrants. So, how times have changed. How times have changed. All right, Beto O'Rourke is out there on the campaign trail, and in a policy proposal yesterday said that if he's elected President of the United States of America, he would overhaul the U.S. immigration system. And he was saying it would be the most sweeping rewrite of U.S. immigration law in a generation, and overcome years of inaction to finally advance a new vision of immigration that fully reflects our country's values. Boy, there's the word you got to watch out for when they say reflects our values. So apparently the proposal consists of 3 key pillars, starting with the use of executive authority to reform the asylum system, overturn Trump's travel bans, and reunite separated families. O'Rourke would then use his position as president to urge Congress to enact legislation promoting immigration and naturalization. So Beto wants to keep those walls down, those gates open. All right, getting over to Great Britain. Boy, things are really heating up over there. Still trying to figure out exactly when Theresa May is going to step down as prime minister. Apparently, Boris Johnson could actually go on trial for misleading the British public about the consequences of Brexit. And apparently, a member of the public launched a private prosecution over claims that EU membership was costing Great Britain £350 million a week. And District Judge Margot Coleman threw out arguments by Boris Johnson's lawyers that the case was a vexatious attempt to undermine the result of the 2016 referendum. So, and already the guy who organized this attack against Boris Johnson, he's in trouble because he crowdfunded 370,000 British pounds to prosecute Boris Johnson, and apparently he spent nearly 50,000 of the donations on himself, including self-defense classes, a luxury flat, and branded cupcakes. So entrepreneur Marcus Ball, 29 years old, is the one who's bringing the private prosecution against Boris Johnson. And I have to be very honest, I don't know what being in the EU is costing Great Britain. I imagine it's quite a great deal. Boris Johnson could be absolutely correct. We have to find out about that. Okay, we're coming up here on another commercial break. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones here to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. So a day ago, there was a Dateline about preppers in Sweden. And one of the biggest fears they got is this is from the kids over there because they're all brainwashed now in Europe. The Russians are going to come over here and shoot us. You know what I mean? You know what's crazy? Like, they're letting in, they let people go and fight for ISIS in Syria.
Yes.
And they let them come back. And then they're going to try to tell me with a straight face, you're letting in people, that's the biggest threat. You know, I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know how these people are so stupid. I mean, this is why the West is done. You know, I mean, it's just some basic research. There's plenty of videos and documentation you can see of how they're letting in all these fighters that went to fight. They're allowed to fly the ISIS flag in Sweden.
Yep.
They got those no-go zones in Sweden like they got in France. But the biggest threat is Russia. I mean, the stupidity, Mike, you know, like I had to take myself away for a couple of days because I get so aggravated of the stupidity.
I understand.
The majority of people just are stupid. I just don't understand how this Russia thing keeps going on and on. Mueller, this or that. My God, Mike, when is it going to end?
I'm getting burnout. I'm really burned out on all of this stuff, and I wish it would come to an end some way. You know, maybe that other caller was right. Declare martial law and just start throwing all these people in prison. But it just has dragged on forever, way too long.
But this whole threat, I mean, my God, we're arming jihadis linked to Saudi Arabia. Israel's linked to Saudi Arabia, and Russia and Iran and China's the bad guy? I mean, come on, give me a break. You know, I mean, this is... And, Mike, I watched Trump the other day, and he was right on with Mueller and how it's a scam and stuff. But then he knows the economy's not the real economy. Like, you know, he said, they were lowest unemployment. We know what the unemployment... I mean, it's just... And he's like, China pulled out of the trade... China didn't pull out of the trade deal. Like, I mean, it's just not true. So I don't know why...
I think it was Trump basically pulled the plug on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was not a good deal. But, yeah, Trump's getting a little reckless with the truth these days. That's a bad sign.
And did you hear he's going to sell Japan 105 F-35s? Good luck with those planes.
Yeah. I don't know why Japan is buying them. but probably some arm twisting involved there.
And also, Mike, you know, the only refinery we have for rare earth minerals is like in California, I think, or something. It's like something Pass.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it, but do you know China owns like a portion of that? So, I mean, I don't know how that would work out, but it's still not enough. If you combine, like, because we don't, even though we can refine them, well, we'll ship it out to process, right? Like, there's different steps involved in that, and there's just not enough. China not only has the majority, including in Africa, the Chinese with the rare earth minerals, but they have, like, they basically control all of it too because of their companies.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so I mean, they have, so the rare earth thing's important because it's got, like, you know, for magnets and with gyroscopes and this or that. What about Tesla with the batteries? Like, if Apple's going to buy a Tesla car, gee, are they going to have enough batteries to go around?
It's going to be a major problem. You know, our industry has become very dependent on these rare earth elements, and we were all buddy-buddy with China, and that was all well and good. And, you know, globalism, yeah, it's okay to be dependent on these countries on the other side of the planet. I imagine right now there's probably prospectors out there in the West looking for other sources of rare earth elements that can be mined. Because, yeah, batteries for not just the electric car, but for personal electronic devices. Those windmills that the environmentalists love so much take about 300 pounds of rare earth elements for those magnets to generate electricity with. So, yeah, they're critical. And if China goes ahead with this blockade, you're going to see some serious economic upheaval in this country. There'll be companies that'll have to shut their doors.
And I believe, what is there, 17 different rare earth minerals?
Yep.
Something like that, right?
Yep, 17.
Yeah, and and you know, they have plenty of other cards to play, but yeah, like you said, Trump said this was going to, you know, trade wars are easy to win. You know, don't worry. Nobody wins trade wars. You know, I mean, nobody will win a trade war, but you know what? China has a lot more cards to play than we do. I know a lot of people say, well, we don't manufacture anything here. We don't have to worry about, we can print money. But the problem is the world's moving away from the dollar, and also China's got the belt in the road. They got a lot of other partners that they can go with to make up the difference. And I saw Trump, he also said, oh, you know, China, you know, we can go to Vietnam. You know, they said, oh, if they move out of China, they'll go to Vietnam or here and there. I'm like, yeah, but if they move to Vietnam, how's that making America great again? Like, if they move out of China and go to Vietnam, like, you're still stuck without anything coming back home. Because, I don't know, Mike, what's the last manufacturer you saw besides the steel and aluminum thing, which they talked about that, a long time ago? What other things have been built? Nothing. I mean, it's still nothing. You know, and it's been all this time. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think this is going to end well.
No, I don't think it is. And apparently, Malaysia has come out with a proposal for a common Asian currency. One currency for all the countries in Asia, backed by gold to keep it stable. And that is definitely a shot at the dollar.
And before I get off the phone, Mike, even in Africa, did you see they're going to have a free trade zone in all of Africa? When the Chinese are in Africa, so.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
All right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Sudan in Russia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
No, Michael, that was the topic. I misspelled Sweden.
Oh, okay. So there are no other callers?
Correct.
All right. All right. Phone lines are open. All righty. Getting on back to the news here. Getting on back to Brexit. Chancellor Philip Hammond has sparked a lot of fury as he came on out basically with a threat saying that more money will only be released by the government for public spending if the no-deal Brexit is taken off the negotiating table. So they're going to fight this thing right down to the wire. Okay, do you remember John Cleese of Monty Python fame, Fawlty Towers? Plays a ghost in the Harry Potter movies. And he basically came out on Twitter saying that London is no longer an English city. And he basically dredged up previous comments he made about London losing its sense of Englishness, tweeting that the observation has been confirmed by virtually all of his friends from abroad. And John Cleese pointed out, London was the British city that voted most strongly to remain in the EU. They may be regretting that. Over in Germany, the Alternative for Deutschland party, a branch of the party, is under fire. They put out a map showing the west part of Germany taken over by an Islamic caliphate. And so they put out this Photoshop map calling the west and the south of the country a German caliphate. And this was posted by AfD's Berlin-Lichtenberg Facebook page a day after the European Parliament vote ended, featured the flag of Germany over the country's eastern states where AfD won the most support. The 5 federal states in Berlin were painted blue and titled the Federal Republic of Germany. In contrast, the west and the south of the country were painted green and emblazoned with a black flag featuring the Shahada, or Islamic Declaration of Faith, and had a caption that said, "Pictures speak louder than words." So that apparently stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Now, this is an interesting story. Getting on back to London. As you know, there's a knife crime epidemic, and it's reached the point where hundreds of Somali teenagers are being sent back to East Africa by their parents in order to avoid becoming victims of London's knife crime epidemic. And one mother told the BBC how her son was stabbed 4 times in just 17 days in London. They damaged his bladder, his kidneys, his liver. He's got permanent damage. She said he was safer there in Somaliland than he is here. 100% more safe than in London. Well, that raises an interesting question, because a lot of people were saying, well, they're coming in from these other countries already violent. Maybe, maybe not. There might be something else going on. Maybe they're acting out over the fact that they were promised all kinds of free stuff they never got. But apparently another 21-year-old man called Yusuf told Jamal Hassan he moved to Nairobi because he was seeing people get stabbed in London every other day. So Islington Mayor Rakia Ismail, a Somali immigrant, says that around 40% of the Somali families are sending their children back home. Well, if they're not having a knife crime epidemic in Somaliland, then what's going on? That's an important question. Why is there so much violence in London? Okay, this is an article. This came out over on Prison Planet, and it's talking about where America is headed. In fact, the title of the article is "A Random Encounter in a Diner on Memorial Day Shows Exactly Where America is Headed." And I wanted to read that first paragraph, and the rest of the article supports everything that's in there. It talks about this meeting in a diner on Memorial Day that just was very unpleasant experience. So the young adults of today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and generally speaking, the young adults of today are not in good shape. Survey after survey has shown that millennials reject traditional American values more than any other generation that has come before them by a very wide margin. They are selfish, rude, arrogant, boastful, proud, disrespectful, ungrateful, undisciplined, slothful, and completely obsessed with themselves. In fact, one study found they are the most narcissistic generation in American history. They feel entitled to everything, but they don't want to work for it. They want to be treated like kings and queens, but they don't see a problem with treating others like dirt. Of course, there are plenty of young adults that are shining exceptions, but in general, young adults under the age of 30 in America today are a complete mess. We've seen them all, the snowflakes. The ones who were whining and crying and screaming when Donald Trump won the election. This article then goes on to basically describe this millennial couple in the booth next door. Dirty, overweight, ill-behaved. It seems like we are losing our culture already. Okay. So let's talk about Julian Assange, because something is going on. Julian Assange was supposed to appear in court for a U.S. extradition hearing over hacking and espionage charges, but apparently he is in very ill health. He's been moved to the hospital wing of Belmarsh Prison. He's lost a tremendous amount of weight, and WikiLeaks has grave concerns for his health. Apparently, WikiLeaks and his lawyer have said his health had deteriorated so much he's now incapable of even holding a conversation. Now, remember, there was that story that came out when he was first sent to Belmarsh, that he was being drugged with a medication that could have serious psychological aspects. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who don't want Julian Assange to have his day in court because he's going to blow the whistle. That's what he does. That's what WikiLeaks does. They blow the whistle. And so I'm starting to be very concerned that Julian Assange may not leave Belmarsh Prison alive. That they're going to work to get rid of him so that he can't tell the story of Seth Rich or how the Russians had absolutely nothing to do with the break into the DNC computers. Yeah, I suspect the worst, unfortunately. Okay, now the judge in the court-martial of a Navy SEAL platoon leader accused of war crimes in Iraq is weighing defense motions to dismiss the charges or otherwise remove the lead prosecutor and possibly the judge himself from the case. This is all based on defense accusations of prosecutorial misconduct and was originally slated for yesterday, but the judge postponed the proceeding until today at the request of the defense. The hearing comes 11 days before Special Operations Chief Edward Gallagher is due to go on trial, charged with killing a helpless, wounded Islamic State fighter in his custody and of shooting two unarmed civilians, a schoolgirl and an elderly man. So, getting on over to Boeing. Actually, we have a caller on the line. Tom in Florida, welcome to the show. We're going to start you out and take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Good day to you, Michael. Yeah, Michael, I did see something interesting today that's not being talked much into the major news networks, and that's the remittances these illegals are sending back to all those Central American countries of Mexico, which is over $150 billion a year.
Oh, it's a huge amount.
Now, that money never comes back. That money never actually comes back to the United States, I guess, however that goes. But when I saw that figure, it's like, man, and OAN's talking about it again today. They always talk about the immigration situation, so it's a really good thing that
okay,
network's on the TV.
Tom, I'm going to put you on hold. Stay on the line. Don't hang up. We'll be right back after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Tom in Florida about immigration and whether you're talking about the remittances being sent back to their home countries or the free medical care or the Title VIII housing, which has finally been cut off. There is no question that this flood of illegal immigrants, something like 26 million strong, is a huge burden on the American people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Michael, but I do want to give you something on what's going on also with that situation. Donald Trump's getting ready right now to put tariffs on Mexico for illegal immigration. He's going to tariff them. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, he's going to sign a law. I believe it's going to be next week. He's going to sign a law that Mexico, they're trying to pass this thing with Canada and Mexico, but Trump's also threatening the fact that he's going to be signing a bill very shortly that if Mexico doesn't stop this flow of illegals coming here, he's going to put tariffs on them. And I got a little bit of information, Michael, that was really interesting you might want to be aware of. A friend of mine, he's an Ecuadorian, and he told me a lot of these illegals go to Ecuador because Ecuador uses American currency, and they love the American currency, and they do not want to leave Ecuador at all. They love that city called Guayaquil, Guayaquil, whatever.
Yep.
And he was telling me that all these, Ecuador's not taking no more illegals. They can't handle it. They're bursting at the seams. But he was telling me that a lot of these Central Americans, they are only coming up here to get the remittances to send back to their families in Central America and Mexico, mainly Central America. Because, I mean, if you get $1,000 sent back a month to one of those families down there, they're living a pretty good lifestyle.
Yes.
And if you notice, a lot of these Central Americans, they do not want to head over to Venezuela or Argentina, which is a lot closer, believe it or not, than the United States. They're not going to Argentina. They're not going to the South American cities. They're coming here to the United States, and they're not going to those countries in South America.
Well, I can understand why they wouldn't want to be going to Venezuela right now. I mean, that's a war waiting to happen.
Right. I understand that, but if that was a straighten out, they still probably wouldn't want to go there. They'd rather come up here to this country. And that's what Trump's, I think, looking at. He's realizing, wait a minute, this is nothing but a total invasion of our country.
Yes.
These people are not, most of them are 90% of our workers. I mean, we got enough people doing lawn service and all that. So
yeah,
I don't know what's going to potentially happen other than Nancy Pelosi, Michael, I keep harping on, you get tired of me hearing it, but until I see Trump arrest some of these Democrats or even Republicans for sanctuary cities, I don't think this thing is going to stop. Until you see one of the news networks say a breaking news, Trump is now having people arrested for aiding and colluding a sedation of the nation through illegal immigration. Until I see that, I don't know what to expect from this administration or what's going to happen in the government, period. Because it's just an onslaught. In California, if you think about it, that was the home of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get a dog catcher barely elected as a Republican over there nowadays. Most areas.
Yep.
And California's gone. Arizona's going to be next. Texas is on the brink. I mean, Florida, the governor here, DeSantis, he signed a no sanctuary city bill. So, I mean, that was great news. So we'll see what happens. But I still say, Michael, this immigration thing's got to start with people being arrested. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, it will. Okay, Tom, got to let you go. Got to take a station identification break. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So getting on back into the news, talk about Boeing here a little bit. Apparently, Boeing's CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, was being interviewed and admitted that, yes, Boeing fell short on safety, specifically about the angle of attack disagree alert, which had been standard equipment on all earlier models of the 737 and was now an optional for extra cash option on the MAX. But he's out there saying that he's confident that they've fixed the problems and that he would not hesitate to put his own family in a 737 MAX. And he said this on CBS Evening News. I don't know how the family would feel about that. So we'll see what's going to happen with that story. And last word I heard is that the 737 MAXs are going to remain grounded for another 2 months. And airlines are panicking. They're losing revenue. They're missing the summer travel season. It's a mess here. All right, let's talk about the Green New Deal. This, at the national level, is something proposed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it's turned out to be a massive failure. It failed in the Senate, and many Americans didn't want it to happen. because it would crush an untold number of jobs in the energy sector, leaving middle-class, hardworking American families in a bad situation. But the Green New Dealers are not ready to give up, and they're trying to now push this at a state level. And apparently they've achieved their first victory over in New Mexico. Again, when Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham signed the Green New Deal-like bill known as the Energy Transition Act. The new law will require the state to transition to 100% carbon-free energy. It doesn't set a timeline there. And, you know, carbon is getting demonized unfairly. Carbon was made the villain, so it could be taxed and used to exert control over us. Carbon is not a bad thing. Our bodies are mostly carbon, in case you'd forgotten. And carbon dioxide is plant food. And even if we shut down all human sources of carbon dioxide, there are going to be things like decaying foliage, volcanoes that are going to keep pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But if there isn't enough to support the plant life, then plant life goes into decline and we start going hungry. And we're already looking at that for the end of this year because of all the flooding. Okay. Planned Parenthood President Leana Wen is out there constantly screaming about how many women died from illegal abortions before Roe v. Wade. And over the last 3 months, she's used a line stating that before Roe, thousands of women died every year from abortion due to attacks on safe, legal abortion care or women not having access to essential health care. So the Washington Post decided to check up on that claim and discovered that the numbers were somewhat exaggerated. Now, as early as 1959, even pro-abortion researchers were acknowledging thousands of women were not dying from illegal abortions. That had been the case back in the 1930s because of a lack of antibiotics. But even going back to 1959, abortions were being done and the women were not being killed, not in huge numbers. Okay, we've got a little bit of a mystery to solve here. And we're seeing two different versions of the story regarding Trump's pick to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And the guy's name is Charles Canterbury Jr. And in some articles, it's saying that he is a Second Amendment loving former cop. And then in other articles, it's saying that he's all in favor of strict gun control. And I even had a reader write on in and say, why have we got these two different kind of clashing stories? And I'm saying, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where this guy's really coming from. Is he for real? Is he a gun supporter, or is he going to be another gun grabber? And I would like to find out. And this article over at Madness Hub says he's a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. So, okay, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. And we could use a few phone calls here to help finish out the hour. Up on Mars, the Curiosity rover has found proof of significant amounts of water. They found clay deposits showing that water was once present on the red planet. Now, NASA, let's be very honest here. We've known that Mars once had large amounts of flowing water going all the way back to the Mariner missions, which sent back pictures of very obvious stream and riverbeds. And it's been confirmed time and time again. And not to seem churlish or anything about it, but I would like curiosity to find something new that hasn't already been discovered. Like, for example, what's inside those Martian blueberries? Are they really bacterial colonies? Remember a while back there was this spectacular picture. It was called the Martian crab. And it was this strange crab-like form sticking out of a hole in the side of a hill. And curiosity didn't go back to take a closer look, but it certainly looked organic. Yeah, it's time to basically, I think, really do a serious search for life on Mars. I think it's there. Dr. Gilbert Levin is convinced it's there. And there was another article that came out about how this bacteria that can survive in 190-degree water proves there could be life on Mars. Well, Mars goes the other way on the temperature dial. They're very cold. Okay. So, yeah. Curiosity should have taken along a decent microscope to look for microbes here. Okay. Story coming out of government slaves here. Apple's privacy shtick is just an act. And apparently your purchase history to iTunes is sold to data slurpers, to marketers. Rachel Maddow's ratings continue to plummet. Well, she spent 2 years lying to her audience. They're not going to forgive her for that here. Since 9/11, the United States government has spent $7 trillion on war. That's trillion with a T. And wars all over the place. 80 different wars. Okay. So, apparently there is a pending showdown between Italy and the EU about its right to stumble into fiscal collapse without Brussels' nanny-state supervision. Well, it raises the question about how much of Italy's banking sector problems are the result of too much nanny-state supervision. Because we know that sometimes banks make mistakes, but sometimes they're guided into mistakes by government intervention here. Okay. Here in the United States of America, facial recognition technology is facing a huge backlash. People are not comfortable with it. They're concerned about privacy violations. Probably most people are concerned about the high number of false positives that these systems will produce. So the tech companies are trying to sell it elsewhere. Over in the Middle East, over in Asia. Okay. Got that one. There's a Chinese company is claiming to have perfected a hydrogen-powered vehicle, can travel 500 kilometers using only water as fuel. I hope this isn't another one of those electrolysis systems. And the vehicle's made by Qingyan Cars in Henan Province, made its first drive on Wednesday of last week when local Communist Party chiefs visited the plant. The vehicle has reportedly not been tested over longer distances, but Ping Qingyan, the company's CEO, said it could go 300 to 500 kilometers using 300 to 400 liters of water as fuel. Okay. He's saying the water that we are using is ours. We don't have to go to the Middle East to buy petrol. Water is not polluting either. And apparently the car runs on a chemical reaction using a catalyst applied to a mixture of aluminum powder and the water. And apparently the reactants can be recycled. Well, that's going to be kind of interesting here. Alrighty. Apparently, Illinois, going against the national trend, has passed a sweeping abortion rights bill, and they've rolled back their partial birth abortion ban. That may be a bit of an overreaction. And again, abortion is such a gray issue. I'm in agreement with those who think that abortion should be limited to just the first 6 or 8 weeks. That once you've got a heartbeat and you've got a nervous system in there that can feel pain, that you should stop at that point. Nobody can say for certain when that begins. Maybe it's time for somebody to go on in there with a little tiny in utero EEG and measure the brain activity of that fetus. Apparently, President Trump just torpedoed Roy Moore's Alabama Senate campaign, said Roy Moore cannot win. Well, that was a tacky thing to do, I think. All righty. Let's go back up here, find some more news. All righty. We already talked about the water discovery. And here's an article. This came out of Zero Hedge. And it's talking about how the globalists need only one more major event to basically sabotage the economy. And the author is basically saying that the powers that be want to crash the economy so they can restart it in a new form that serves them even better, probably the cashless economy. So, and then this article goes on to the trade war distraction and how it's already harming our economy. All right, we talked about the NASA scientists here. All righty. Talked about the John McCain warship. Apparently, Hillary Clinton got on the train to bash Facebook, saying it was a sexist trash video of Nancy Pelosi. And apparently, Hillary was out at a commencement speech at some university or other and couldn't resist just ripping into Donald Trump. She can't let go. She just cannot let go. And apparently, she was speaking at Hunter College, talking about the Mueller press conference and saying the nation is witnessing an assault on the rule of law. And she went off there fantasizing about the title of Madam President and comparing today's political climate to some Americans' support of Nazi Germany. Now, these comments, I don't know that this is really good material for a graduating class about to enter the real world. Why they'd listen to a two-time presidential failure is anybody's guess. But Hillary just can't let it go. She just can't let it go. Okay, so getting on back here. Some of the data is coming out of the recent European Union elections, and the data is revealing that Nigel Farage, had this been a general election, Nigel Farage would have won in a landslide. And it's rather amazing to see all the people who are coming on out and say, you know, don't pay attention to Farage. You know, they're afraid of him. He could very easily be the next prime minister. Okay, we've got a caller on the line here, and let's go to Don in Iowa. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, yes, Judge Roy Moore, Trump never had any reason to stick his nose. If they would have left him alone, just let that whole election last time alone, he would have won. instead a Democrat won. Judge Roy Moore would have beat that Democrat. Instead, they wanted Trump basically campaigned against the Republicans. Was what they did, and then they ended up with the Democrat in the Senate. Now, Judge Roy Moore, he dated young women there, but in Alabama, it's legal to get married at age 16 with parental consent.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that bad? He was, I think, dating one or two girls that were 15 with parental consent. He had he talked to their mom. He said, hey, I'm thinking about marrying this girl. I'd like to go out with her and stuff. I mean, it might not seem right to somebody who lives in New York City, but I mean, that's the way it is in Alabama. And I think Trump's wrong. He should keep his mouth shut about that and let the guy win. If they need a Republican, they need all the Republicans they can get in the Senate, so they can get their Supreme Court. I mean, if they let the Democrats take the Senate in addition to the House,
then
they
Trump
really will
is
be
history.
in trouble. They'll be in trouble with they won't be able to get even the Supreme Court or the other judges confirmed or anything. Okay, I'm going to let you go, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to let you go. And it was one of the more questionable things Donald Trump did, where he basically effectively campaigned helping the Democrat in that election. Okay, so let's see. All right. Going through stuff here. All right. We already talked about Chair and her tweet about wanting President Trump to be sexually assaulted. That's a little sick here. Okay, apparently this public library was going to have a Drag 101 class for teenagers. And apparently they decided to cancel the event after they got veiled threats and hostile messages. Has anybody really thought about talking to the parents about how they feel about all this? Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And with a reference to that earlier phone call about Judge Roy Moore, yeah, I find it kind of a little icky that he was dating 15-year-olds. And even with parental consent, to me, that's a little weird. By the way, have you noticed they're trying to normalize pedophilia? They're calling it age gap love. That's the new PC term. All right, we're going to go to the phones here to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I was noticing on Memorial Day, seems like the people, they grab the meaning for their own political purposes.
Yes.
Like a lot of neocon Republicans are like support the troops. And I saw one meme, if you will, posted. It says, if you really supported the troops, you wouldn't send them to fight in meaningless wars based on lies.
Yes.
And I thought that was the best meme. But among a lot of, I guess you'd call Republicans, they'd be like, oh, what are you, anti-war? Are you a Jane Fonda? Are you a commie? I find that I don't like how the neocons grab the meaning of Memorial Day, and I see all on mainstream media. It's all, they're the ones using Memorial Day and Veterans Day for their pro-war agenda. I find it very disturbing.
Well, out here at least, I found it rather interesting that we didn't see quite the tsunami of war movies during Memorial Day that we have in past years. And I think maybe the providers were thinking more in terms of audience share than patriotism. They were rerunning the Harry Potter films. They were rerunning all kinds of very popular movies that people like to look at instead of cramming war movies at us.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm on Facebook to keep in touch with friends and things. And I saw one post, and, you know, so many posts, they support the troops. And, well, one post just showed a poor mother crumped over by her son's graves. And I noticed among my Republican acquaintances, it didn't say anything, no slogans, and none of them pressed like. They all just ignored it.
Yeah.
Because it showed the horror of what the wars are really about. And they didn't want to know about it. They just wanted slogans, support the troops.
Yeah, well, don't forget, a lot of the people who are posting to these groups on Facebook are paid to do it. They're paid propaganda operators. And there was apparently on Memorial Day an incident where somebody tweeted out how the Army was great, and it was good for my life to go through that, and how has being in the military helped you? And it just triggered a Twitter storm of contrary remarks saying the Army ruined my life. You know, I'm homeless now. I'm addicted to drugs, and I can't function. And it just kept on going and going and going, and finally they just deleted the entire Twitter thread. These things can really backfire. I think more and more people are willing to talk about the fact that war is a bad thing, that it isn't glorious, it isn't glamorous, that for all the pomp and banners and flags and music, that it's still people going on out to kill each other over land or gold or whose version of the currency everybody gets to use for the next 100 years. And it's stupid. And I'm sure that probably an advanced alien civilization looking down on us would be saying, are they nuts? Are they out of their mind? They're killing each other in an argument over ink and paper. How much more stupid does it get than that?
Yes. Well, it's never sold to the public over that. It's sold, they're defending our freedom. And they're,
or they all stand by, God wills it, God wills it.
Yeah. But I just hate how that, and I don't like neocons trying to grab the meaning of Memorial Day for their agenda. I hate that. And I can see it all over the mainstream media, and it's enraging to me. But, well, let's hope there's no more wars that'll create more people to reflect on Memorial Day.
All right. Well, Jim, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to a show. And I guess the rare earth elements are not the only area where the U.S. is vulnerable, because Fox News is running a story right now about how dependent pharmaceutical corporations in this country are on Chinese factories. And according to this report, 80% of the active ingredients in America's medicines come from China. Now, what would happen if China shut that off? So, anyway, let's see. And already got that one. Somebody wrote on in saying, you want NASA to keep seeking intelligent life on Mars. I'm still trying to find it here on Earth. Yeah, good comment. Alrighty, getting back to this story. Apparently, let me just get past that one here. Okay, over in New Jersey, in Newark, apparently police have started ticketing drivers who give money to the homeless. And apparently it is a $50 ticket. And city officials are saying the new ordinance is intended to make the roadways safer for the drivers, the pedestrians, and those begging for money. I understand that issue. There are a lot of times I would like to hand a few dollars to a homeless person, but they're on the other side of the crosswalk and I don't want to tempt them into traffic. But at some point, we have to do something. We have to do something about all these homeless people in our country. You can't say that this economy is doing good. You can't say it's in recovery. It's just not possible. So they're also saying when a driver stops and gives a panhandler money, they're basically helping them feed bad habits. We want to discourage this. Well, where do you think these people are going to eat? I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. All right. Just check something here. And just have to all right. Just had to correct something on my server here. But yeah, I mean, there are so many homeless and hungry people around. Now, there are programs like the ones at the churches. But a lot of these programs, they don't cover the entire week. I mean, it's where do you expect these people to go, especially here? We're on an island. It's not like they can walk anywhere. Now, Hawaii did have a program running for a while that if you had somebody on the mainland who was going to take you in, give you a place to stay, that the state government would pay for the airline ticket. And I think that was a good program. I don't know if it's still underway, but it was a good idea. But it's like we seem to have developed this amnesia, if you will, to the fact that there are a lot of homeless and hungry people in the streets of America. It's like, when did they become invisible? And every time one of these politicians or news people stand up and say, oh, the economy's doing really, really good, people need to stand up and say, then why do we have so many homeless and hungry in the streets of America? That shouldn't be happening in a great nation. I mean, I understand there's always a few homeless and hungry people who can't get mental health treatment, people, veterans who can't reintegrate into society. But we're talking about huge, huge numbers. We have 8,000 on this island alone, and this is a small island. So, okay, over at CNN, Jim Acosta is responding to charges he's biased against Trump. And he's saying that neutrality for the sake of neutrality is useless under this president. And apparently he's got a new book out, which for all intents and purposes seems to confirm. Yes, he's biased. So his book is called The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America, and deals with this perceived bias against the president by noting neutrality for the sake of neutrality does not serve us in the age of Trump. And in the book, Acosta admits to sometimes grandstanding and showboating, and that he opts for bait when questioning Trump. And it does bother a lot of people. He's gained his notoriety with his excessive questioning of Donald Trump. And, of course, being called fake news by him. Okay. Still at CNN, Chris Cuomo faces a backlash. Yesterday, he tweeted an enigmatic comment about one of the NRA promotional videos. The video showed Kimberly Corbin, an armed mother who acquired firearms after her rape in college. And she says, I'm a mother of 2, and if that predator or anyone else tries to harm me or my family, they have to come through my firearm first. You know, obviously a pro-gun rights message. When Cuomo tweeted the video, he posted a comment suggesting that Corbyn's story was unique to the United States. He said, only in America. I'm not exactly sure what that means. And apparently neither are a lot of other people. Okay. Apparently, there has been an incident where a man lit himself on fire across the street from the White House, according to the Secret Service. And he survived. Apparently, he was on the ellipse near 15th and Constitution Avenue. And he set himself on fire, and now he's in the hospital. So that's kind of a weird thing here. Okay, article out of Investment Watch blog, actually originally out of Natural News, and it's saying, how can conservatives realize that climate change is a total hoax, but still be conned by the vaccine hoax, which is run exactly the same way? And it's basically going on. And there have been a lot of hoaxes that fooled the world. Remember Tulip Mania was a good one? And yeah, it should be fairly obvious. But then again, human-caused global warming, they're invested in the carbon credits. I'm sorry, they're invested in the vaccine companies. That's why they keep on going with it. I'm sure that they know full well that there are problems with the vaccine system. But as long as they're making money out of it, they're going to keep on doing that. Okay, Uber, the hail ride pioneer, is out there, and now they've announced a new, shall we say, feature. Apparently, when you get into an Uber car and you are driven someplace, the driver will rate you. And Uber has now announced that passengers who receive low ratings from the drivers will be banned from the company. The app will stop working, and the company's head of safety brand and initiatives, Kate Parker, made the announcement in a post titled Safety and Respect for All. And she explained the firm's original community guidelines from 2016 have been updated to make them simpler and clearer, and riders will need to confirm they understand the new rules or they may lose access to Uber. The major change outlined is that passengers may now be banned from utilizing the service if they develop a significantly below average rating, a move which the company sees as only fair since drivers are already beholden to maintaining a satisfactory feedback average from their customers. So, respect is a two-way street, and so is accountability, Parker wrote. And TechCrunch reported that Uber is not disclosing the average rider rating, but customers at risk of being deactivated will receive special notifications and opportunities to improve ahead of being blacklisted. So, I've heard some stories about things that happen in those Uber cars. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is now out there questioning free speech. Apparently there was a video that she did not like. There was a minor league baseball team aired a Memorial Day tribute video that grouped her with the likes of communist dictators and other enemies of freedom, such as Kim Jong-un and Fidel Castro. And AOC reacted by saying such hateful messages provoke a flood of death threats against her and questioning those who believe in free speech. Well, apparently the Fresno Grizzlies played this patriotic video was set to the words of the late President Ronald Reagan's 1981 inaugural address. Ocasio-Cortez's image was displayed during a part where the president referred to enemies of freedom, along with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and former Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Now, the baseball team issued apologies to their fans, community service members, and AOC herself. and AOC is still on the warpath. Now, we already know they're trying to chip away at that First Amendment with the anti-Semitism argument. And they may start stretching that by saying hate speech, hateful messages aren't protected by the First Amendment. So I've got to keep an eye out for that one. I saw this story yesterday, and I'm glad it had a good resolution here. Down in Mississippi, there was a Campgrounds of America, spelled with a K, KOA. I used to use those myself when I was young. And apparently there was a black couple that were there having a picnic, and the campground manager told the couple they did not have a reservation and pulled a gun on them, and the couple immediately left. Well, that manager has now been fired. And yeah, I mean, come on. So it's just, these are weird times. These are very weird times. And again, I have to wonder if all of these medications that are out there, floating in the water supply, floating in the rivers, if they're having an effect on our brains, because we're seeing so much bizarre, aggressive behavior. It's like the entire nation is walking around stone. All righty. Over in Great Britain, there was this ad for a Porsche garage in Great Britain, and it featured a sexy female mechanic. And on the basis of one complaint, just one complaint, the Advertising Standards Authority banned the ad. Now, the ad was published in the February issue of 9/11 and Porsche World magazine. It was captioned "Attractive Servicing," and it shows a female mechanic in a figure-hugging black outfit and wearing pink high heels working under the car. There's nothing shocking about it. There are no naughty bits showing. In fact, I thought it was quite artistic. One complaint. So we live in seriously restrictive times. We've lost our ability to just go with the flow. Okay, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to go through it again. And it's talking about there's this attempt to normalize pedophilia as a mainstream sexual orientation. And the move involved pedophiles rebranding themselves as minor attracted persons in the hope they'll be accepted as part of the LGBTQ community. And apparently it was somewhat effective, as multiple outlets reported it was okay. Now they're talking about age gap love in a reality TV show. Now, this is Great Britain's Channel 5, which was owned by Viacom, is promoting the relationship between a 16-year-old girl and a 44-year-old man. Instead of calling this what it is, the television network called it age gap love. Now, the age of consent in Britain is 16, but the program is admitting that the affection the 44-year-old man had for the girl began when she was well before that age. I think this is just a little bit sick. I think it's definitely a little bit sick. Over in Georgia, their new abortion law is really causing a ruckus, and part of the problem is that Georgia's economy does have a lot of film development, because it's a beautiful country. And so now Disney is saying they may pull out. Disney's chief executive Bob Iger told Reuters it would be very difficult for the media company to keep filming in Georgia if a new abortion law takes effect, because many people will not want to work in the U.S. state. Now, Disney has filmed movies like in Georgia, like Black Panther and Avengers Endgame. And it would be a major blow to the state's efforts to create production jobs if Disney stops filming there. Now, we're also hearing that companies like Netflix are thinking about pulling out. This would be a major, major shock. Now, this is all based because back on May 7th, the governor signed into law a ban on abortion after a doctor can detect a fetal heartbeat about 6 weeks into a pregnancy. And the controversy is that many women don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we have an update about that story about the man who set himself on fire near the White House. And unfortunately, the news is that he died at the hospital. Apparently, he suffered burns to 85% of his body and apparently was high on drugs. He'd been taking synthetic marijuana laced with PCP. Bad, bad combination. And police sources say he was hallucinating and did not respond to them. And the Secret Service put the blaze out, oh my goodness, and took him to the hospital. All right, so we're talking about entertainment. We're talking about Georgia. And as it turns out, everybody wants to get into the movies these days. Barack and Michelle Obama have started a production company. They have apparently a deal with Netflix. And now Hillary and Chelsea Clinton are cooking up a production company focusing on stories by and about women. And Bill Clinton obviously is not going to be part of this. But Hillary and Chelsea have been speaking with studios about financing a slew of programs, basically saying the discussions are just in their infancy. The Clintons plan to use film and television to influence culture and society now that Hillary Clinton is out of politics. Oh, that were so. So Hillary Clinton previously signed on to help produce a TV show with Steven Spielberg. That series, The Woman's Hour, is an adaptation of a book about activists who fought to get the right to vote. So everybody is getting into the movie and TV business here. Let's see. I think I mentioned this earlier in the show, but maybe not. The former Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security testified under oath that he warned Hillary Clinton twice about the unsecure BlackBerries, and she just ignored him. That is a real mess. And somebody, it does deserve to be fully investigated. She did commit felony violations of Title 18. Comey admitted as much. So, anyway. Apparently stamps are being issued here in the United States to commemorate the Chinese contribution to the first transcontinental railroad. Well, it's nice that they're doing that, but those Chinese were not really treated all that well by the railroad companies. And so I used to be a stamp collector, and I let that all go away when I was much younger. Stamps are so expensive these days. And let's see, anything else here that we can look at? 73% of oncology providers see benefits of medical marijuana. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of useful things for you to hear about. Please share what you learn here with all of your friends. Use email, paper mail, face-to-face. Don't bother with social media. It's being totally scrubbed at this point here. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to What Really Happened. And we'll see you tomorrow. Aloha, America.